Alright folks, this marks round 2 of me trying to get this right. First time I recorded it and uploaded it to YouTube and then realized it didn't have any sound, so that was awkward. I am wearing currently gloves to signify snowpocalypse. Oh. And I also want to thank you guys for getting on today and taking notes, because it is important that we get this stuff done. The first thing I'd like to have you guys do is set up your ISN. If you are in Miss Puckett, this is Miss Puckett, by the way. Hello. If you're in my class, I think we should be on pages 26 and 27. Depending on who your teacher is, you may be on a different page. But go to the pages after John Quincy Adams. The 2 pages that follow John Quincy Adams, and you should be fine. You should have, by this time, gone to my website, epsilon.com/mpuckett2 to get information about the PowerPoint we're doing, etc. It's all been posted there, so yes, just be prepared for that. If you need to, you can go ahead and pause the screen, but I'm going to be moving on. Anytime you see the notebook paper, if you want to pause the screen so you can adjust what you're doing or finish copying stuff down, go ahead and do that. But we're going to be trying to move kind of quickly here. Okay, so first thing I want to let you know, we are studying Andrew Jackson. He was our 7th president. Yay, 7! I don't know why I felt the need to scratch it all out, but somehow it makes it prettier. So right now I feel like you guys are looking at like a black and white photo, except for these really awesome gloves I'm wearing. Something I want you to take note of is Andrew Jackson's vice president. His vice president is none other than John Calhoun, who switches over during the election of 1828. John Calhoun, who was John Quincy Adams' vice president, switches over and decides to join Andrew Jackson's cause instead. As we go through these, you guys are going to notice at the bottom of every slide, I'm going to write some numbers. These are the numbers on your handout that look like the handout that looks like this, that you should have printed offline or whatever. If you haven't printed it offline, go ahead and do that now, or picked up if you were in an afternoon class yesterday. But those are the numbers that you should have covered by now. Andrew Jackson earned his fame during the War of 1812, and I'm going to give you a second to kind of consider what battle specifically he became famous at. It's a very famous city. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. If you said the Battle of New Orleans, you are correct. He gained his fame at the Battle of New Orleans, which was the last non-official battle of the War of 1812. That is how he became famous. That is how he earned his nickname of Old Hickory. We're going to talk more about that later. Something else to know about him that's pretty significant. He founded what's called Jacksonian, wonder where they got that name from, democracy. I'm going to make this look kind of like a, I don't even know, but I feel like it looks like a strange river, which is weird, and I'm fully aware, but there we go, look, has a little bit of color, so that's fun. He is the first Democrat. Democrats, as we know them today, were founded by Andrew Jackson. He was the first, like, primarily just Democratic person. So there's that about Andrew Jackson. The next thing I'd like to have you do is you're just writing down John C. Calhoun as the vice president. I talked briefly about the election of 1828 and how John Calhoun switched sides. Well, this was a really big deal. This election marks the turning point in American history because they changed the laws on who's allowed to vote. Whereas previously it had been all wealthy guys, all aristocrats, all of the well-educated people, because let's face it, they're just fancier. But now the door is open to where more of the common man, as in farmers, farmers, people out west, landowners, yes, but it's, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. That's by the way, that's a pitchfork, and those are like plants. So that's a farmer to me. It marks the beginning of political involvement for ordinary Americans. Ordinary Americans just means people who are not necessarily of the elite. They're not necessarily the best educated. They're not necessarily going to have the kind of the impressive stature that, ooh, goodness gracious, that a lot of people at this time period have. His election with John Quincy Adams was really intense. It did not end well. It was not a happy thing. It starts something called mudslinging, and this phrase is very significant, which is one of the reasons it's a vocabulary word for you. Mudslinging, and I'm going to cover it with yellow because that's the closest color I have to brown right now. Mudslinging is where you're basically just trash talking your opponent. But it takes a whole new level. John Quincy Adams accuses Jackson of being a murderer, a gambler, slave trading, and treason. Jackson accuses John Quincy Adams of like using money, misuse of money, using taxpayer money to live like and fulfill his very lavish lifestyle that he'd grown accustomed to. But it kind of like they're attacking each other's wives. Like it's a really not okay situation. And like they didn't like when Jackson ended up winning, and when he won, he didn't like he and Adams didn't talk. Usually the loser will generally call the winner and like concede and say, "Hey, it was a good race. Nice knowing you, bud." They didn't even do that, though. They didn't speak to each other, and Jackson said he would never forgive John Quincy Adams for some of the things he said about his wife. So there's that. Awkward. Jacksonian democracy, the idea of letting the people rule. Again, this is the first election where we've really opened the door for more common people to vote. And Jackson is he loves this. This is his dream. And so he not only abides by this, but this becomes like his hallmark. At his inauguration, something that's usually a very dignified affair becomes a straight up house party. People from all over the United States come and party on the White House lawn. Jackson was really big on that. He thought that if the common man was participating in government, then the government was doing right by the people. And so the average guy really liked Jackson because they felt like they could see themselves in Jackson. I think that's one of the reasons Jackson was most successful is because they looked at him and they said, "You grew up in the West, I grew up in the West. You were born outside the 13 colonies, the original. I was born outside the 13 colonies." And kind of this whole idea that Jackson was one of them. It's kind of like the same idea that I never really watched The Voice before Daniel Bradbury was on. And then Daniel Bradbury was on, and she was from Cyprus. And I was like, I'm from Cyprus. I relate to you. I know you. And so it made me want to watch The Voice because I could relate to her. I said, oh, look, if you're on The Voice, I can at the very least watch The Voice. I can get involved in that. In the same way, the common man looked at politics and Jackson and said, you're a common man just like me. You can be involved in it, and I can be involved in it too. I would like you guys at this time to answer why had ordinary Americans, not really participated in politics up until now? And go ahead and pause the screen while you answer this question. Okay. The only thing you have to do here is define the word mudslinging right here. Just define that word for me. And by the way, you should be on through to number 5. If you have not answered number 5 on your handout, go ahead and do that now. We're about to get to number 6 here on this page. I'm sorry, I haven't been keeping up with that. This is the start of number 6. Jackson starts the current Democratic Party, and I want you guys to think for a minute if you remember the what animal is represented by the Democratic Party, what the symbol of the Democratic Party is. I'm going to give you about 5 seconds to think about it, and then I'm going to say it. 4, 3, 2, 1. A donkey! Jackson was a very stubborn man. He was unrelenting. They called him Old Hickory. And you should know that hickory is a very, very tough wood, kind of wood. It does not break or bend to anything or anyone's will. Jackson was somebody who was unbreakable. He is outnumbered by far at the Battle of New Orleans, and he looks at that and just says, "Ha ha, you want me to retreat? Well, I'll show you retreat." And like he wins the battle. It's ridiculous. He is unrelenting. He is stubborn, but in his case, it works, at least for the military. He gets his nickname from his toughness and from kind of his hard-headedness, from his stubbornness. I don't know if you guys are seeing the whole idea of the donkey coming into play here, but pretty largely. Okay, next. Sorry, sometimes my cute little mittens hate me. I say mittens, they're gloves. They're not mittens. Mittens are different. Okay, the spoil system. Before I continue to address the spoil system, I feel like this right here is a very important thing for you to take note of. The phrase down here says, "To the victor belongs the spoils," which essentially means if you win something, like if you win an election, you deserve to reap the rewards of that election. Well, Jackson, as seen here, Jackson believes that he's the one who won the election. Therefore, he should get to reap the rewards for that. And so one of the things he does is he rewards his supporters with government jobs, and he throws out the people he doesn't like. And honestly, it makes sense because the government remains responsive to the people. If they didn't like the previous administration, chances are they didn't like the people they had working for them. It makes sure that people stay loyal to the president. The president is surrounded by people that they trust. It increases party support. It causes less bickering because everyone has the same general ideals. So that's a really big deal. You should have been able to answer number 7, and number 8 is an opinion question. Boop. Next thing. Goodness gracious. The Second National Bank. Now this is one of Jackson's early fights. He sets up the Second National Bank. Jackson feels like the bank is organized by wealthy Easterners and no regular citizens have any control over it. So he vetoes the bank charter, and now we have all of this money sitting in our national bank. Now I'm going to draw a pretend bank here. This is my national bank. Boop, boop. Well, here's the deal with the National Bank. Now that the National Bank is no longer going to exist, it's kind of important that we figure out what to do with all the money that's in there. So, and this green is going to represent money. So, in the same way that Jackson rewards his friends and supporters with government jobs, any state that has been really good to him, he calls them, his little pets. And states have their own banks as well, and so any state that has treated him particularly well, he kind of like plays favorites. He treats them as though they're, the teacher's pet, the president's pet. And he's actually going to give out all the money. He's going to give out money, but only to states that he likes and states that have supported him. So all the money comes out of the National Bank and goes to these little cute little pet banks. It goes to all of these like cute little pet banks. If I might eat a little more, it would be helpful. They go to all these little pet banks. It is much the same idea of the spoil system, this whole thought process that if you're good to me, I'm going to be good to you. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. That's the whole kind of background behind this idea of this national bank and Jackson's pet banks. Now, at this point, the only thing that you really need to add is this right here. Pet bank supports are just supports for favored banks. If your bank has favor, you're going to get a lot of support. If you're from the president, if he doesn't like you, well, you can guess how that will go. That is all for now. If we are out again tomorrow, same time, same place. Please be sure that you fill in the Google form on the Snowpocalypse section of my website. Fill in the Google form and watch the extra video. Extra link. It'll give you a really good breakdown of the whole idea of Jacksonian democracy. Alright, have a great evening. Stay warm.